What is network and how it works? In the technology world, the network or computer networking is a combination of group of computers and devices connected together that can communicate with each other. They meet and talk through network connection standards and protocols, which means they can share data, resources, and services to each other. It's like a system where the components are interconnected and connected in order to share information or data. Think of it like our nervous system. Our nervous system has different components or body parts to make the whole nervous system works, right? There are components that are interconnected for it to work properly. For example, our senses gather information and transmit it to our brain with the help of our nerves. Each part has different roles and functions, but generally, as a group, they are called the nervous system. There are components or body parts that are interconnected for it to work properly. For example, our senses gather information and transmit it to our brain with the help of our nerves. Each part has different roles and functions, but generally, as a group, they are called the nervous system. In computer network, it's the same. It's a combination or group of components connected to each other that communicate and exchange information to make the whole system work. The components, devices, cables, or protocols have their own functions to make the whole network works. In a large scale, the network consists of devices like computers, smartphones, printers, scanners, server, IP cameras, etc., connected via network cable or wireless running on a set of network protocols like IP addresses, routing protocols, and more. For example, typically in an office, computers, laptops, printers, scanners, and others are connected to network switches. These network switches are in turn connected to the router. They are connected to our home router provided by our internet service provider, either Globe, PLDT, Converge, or others. Commonly, a normal residential are connected via wireless. We just turn on the Wi-Fi in our smartphone or laptops, put it in the correct password, we're connected to the internet. In some houses and residential areas, there are also wired connections beside wireless. This is where we use an Ethernet cable that is connected to our router or switch. Then we connect it to our devices. Different setup but same function and goal like wireless, that is to let us connect to the outside world, aka internet. Now, the devices, cables, and other network components in a common residential houses or areas are plug-and-play devices. For example, the home router that we usually have provided by our ISP. We just connect it, power it on, and boom, we can connect to the internet, given it was set up correctly by the technician. It is also called unmanaged devices. That means we do not configure it manually, or if there is, it is purely basic configuration. In most cases, it is via graphical user interface or GUI. These devices also have limited features and capabilities when it comes to advanced networking. He really designed for residential and really small offices. He really designed for residential and really small offices. On the other hand, we also have what are called managed devices. This is where switches and routers from vendors like Cisco and others come in. It's like it's not like plug and play unmanaged devices. These devices, managed, need to be configured and managed before being used and benefited. There are also many features and capabilities of managed devices. We can control and prioritize network traffic through our managed devices. This is where what we call VIANs, routing and switching, VoIP, COS, and more come into play. Also, usually, it is configured via CLI or command line interface. Large companies like banks, international organizations, BPO, call centers are the most common users of these managed devices. And we as network administrators and network engineers are the one who handle and configure these devices. In this vlog, we will talk about more of the features and configurations of different managed networks devices such as switches and routers in a normal enterprise, a BPO for example. The network consists of many different components. It has hundreds, if not thousands, of end devices like laptops and computers, smartphones, printers, scanners, IP phones, CCTV cameras, alarm devices, servers, switches, routers, and a whole lot more. There are also many network protocols and standards involved like IP addressing, switching, routing protocols, VoIP, and more. They are all interconnected with each other and part of the entire network. I know it can sound confusing for now, but don't worry, we will peel away those things moving forward. In a smaller scale, two computers connected to each other is also considered a network. Here in our example, these two computers are directly connected through a network cable, and this we can call a network. They can now meet and talk, and then just like I said earlier, share resources and services. They can exchange data back and forth. For example, I can share a folder or a file here on a PC on the right, and I can access that folder or file on the PC on the left. Or not, if there is a printer attached to the PC on the right, I can also use that printer to print using the PC on the left, given that it is a set as network printer. I can save or retrieve files back and forth from each PC given that they are connected, and so much more. You get the idea? The concept is to share data and resources back and forth, or allow communication between different devices and components. Like what I said earlier, in a much larger view, the network consists of multiple computers and devices interconnected to each other through networking equipments. For example, switches and routers. We will discuss them later. Here in our example above, we can see that multiple devices are connected to our network, and they all meet and talk with each other to process and share data or services. They can communicate with each other. This is just a simple example of a small network. In today's business and organizations, the network consists of hundreds or thousands of computers and devices connected. Network serves as a bridge for companies and other institutions today to communicate and process information, adding, passing, updating, and so on. Information in applications and programs used by business, banks, enterprises, and other organizations becomes possible because of network connections. And not only limited to one location or place, they can be interconnected overseas or virtually anywhere. This is where Cisco or other networking equipment vendors come in. In large networks such as the network or Fortune 500 companies, governments, and other organizations. It is necessary to manage and maintain the network for the development and security of the business or organization. As I mentioned earlier, they use what we call managed devices such as Cisco routers and switches to support their network infrastructure. These managed devices have the ability to support large networks and many special features that are not available in standard network devices. Examples are VLAN, switching protocols, routing protocols, NAT, VoIP, and many others. Going to talk about each of them in the future lessons. Network serves as the backbone and nerve of almost every company and organizations today. We can safely say that if there is no network, there will be no civilizations like we have today. In a more technical terms, we will manage the path of these computers and devices on how they will meet each other or talk with each other. Mostly, we work in a managed network infrastructure just like the banks and BPO I mentioned earlier. We will configure networking devices such as Cisco switches and routers to establish their connections with each other. We will also configure the standards and protocols on how they will meet or talk. And that is what we will discuss in the next lessons.